continues to unfold in Gaza before the eyes. Many of these wounded people have died while measures to protect civilian life. While the protection of hospitals during warfare is paramount and must be respected by all sides at all times. The destruction of hospitals across Gaza goes beyond depriving Palestinians of their right to access adequate health care. Those hospitals provided sanctuary for thousands of people with nowhere else to go. The destruction wrought by the Israeli military's attacks last Friday on Kamal Adwan Hospital, the last functioning hospital in North Gaza, reflects the patterns of attacks documented in the report. Sporadic and indiscriminate attacks on Israel. Across Gaza, Israeli military operations in and around hospitals and associated combat have had a terrible impact precisely at a time of massive demands on healthcare due to the ongoing conflict. All this is occurring against the backdrop. According to the Palestinian Ministry of Health, more than 1,050 medical professionals have been killed in Gaza. It is important to note that medical personnel are civilians who serve a critical function, particularly in wartime. They enjoy special protections under international law. The recent report by my office documents at least 136 strikes on at least 27 hospitals and 12 other medical facilities in Gaza, which caused significant death and injury among doctors, nurses, medical staff, and other civilians, and damaged or destroyed many of the buildings targeted.
Thank you, Mr. President. Time and again, hospitals have become battlegrounds, rendering them out of services and depriving those in need of life-saving care. The health sector is being systematically dismantled and pushed to the breaking point. Its resilience tested amid dire shortages of medical supplies, equipment, and specialized staff. Only 16 of the 36 hospitals in Gaza remain partially functional, with a total bed capacity of just 1,822, far below what is needed to address the overwhelming health crisis. 9 caregivers and 6 health workers. WHO remains deeply concerned about Dr. Hussam Abu Safia, the director of Kamal Adwan Hospital, who was detained during the raid. We've lost contact with him since and call for his immediate release. Reports indicate that key areas of the hospital were burned and severely damaged during the raid, including the laboratory, surgical unit, engineering and maintenance department, operation theater, and a medical store. WHO and partners' efforts over the last months to sustain the hospital's operations have been undone.
Dr. Mahmoud Abu Nujila, who was killed in an Israeli airstrike on Al-Auda Hospital, wrote a message many months ago on a whiteboard in the hospital normally used for planning surgeries. And I quote him, whoever stays until the end will tell the story. We did what we could. Remember us. Remember us.
This week's precise operation by the IDF revealed the extent of Hamas's abuse of the facility. Over 240 terrorists were apprehended, including 15 who participated in the October 7th massacre, the darkest day in Israel's modern history, where over 1,200 lives were brutally taken by the terrorists. Among those apprehended was the hospital director himself, who is suspected of being a Hamas operative, as hundreds of Hamas and Islamic Jihad terrorists were hiding inside the Kamal Adwan hospital under his management. He is currently being investigated by Israeli security forces. Colleagues, this operation was not a choice, it was a necessity. It was conducted based on extensive intelligence gathered over months, confirming Hamas's activities on hospital premises. In accordance with international humanitarian law, the IDF has implemented comprehensive measures to mitigate harm to civilians.
A human rights catastrophe continues to unfold in Gaza before the eyes of the world. In most instances, Israel alleges that the hospitals were being improperly used for military purposes by Palestinian armed groups. I've in fact just received a letter from the Israeli ambassador asserting that Kamal Adwan hospital was militarized by Hamas and that Israeli forces took extraordinary measures to protect civilian life while acting on credible intelligence. Yet, Israel has not provided sufficient information to substantiate many of these claims, which are often vague and broad. In some cases, they appear to be contradicted by publicly available information. If these allegations were verified, this would raise serious concerns that Palestinian armed groups were using the presence of civilians intentionally to shield themselves from attack, which would also amount to a war crime. This is why I'm calling for independent, thorough, and transparent investigations into all Israeli attacks on hospitals, healthcare infrastructure, and medical personnel, as well as the alleged misuse of such facilities. Many of these wounded people have died while awaiting treatment because of lack of access to healthcare. All this is occurring against the backdrop
Exploiting their sanctity to shield its murderous aims and wage war against civilians. Despite repeated calls by Israel to cease the unlawful military use of the hospital since the start of the operation in October, these warnings were again ignored and disregarded. This week's precise operation by the IDF revealed the extent of Hamas's abuse of the facility. Over 240 terrorists were apprehended, including 15 who participated in the October 7th massacre, the darkest day in Israel's modern history, where over 1,200 lives were brutally taken by the terrorists. Among those apprehended was the hospital director himself, who is suspected of being a Hamas operative, as hundreds of Hamas and Islamic Jihad terrorists were hiding inside the Kamal Adwan hospital under his management. He is currently being investigated by Israeli security forces.
Time after time, the same acts, the same patterns, the same criminal and inhumane conduct. Dr. Mahmoud Abu Nujila, who was killed in an Israeli airstrike on Al-Auda hospital, wrote a message many months ago on a whiteboard in the hospital normally used for planning surgeries. And I quote him, whoever stays until the end will tell the story. We did what we could. Remember us. Remember us. We owe them more than remembrance. Nothing can explain that for 15 months Palestinians in Gaza have endured hell and been abandoned to this fate.
I thank the permanent observer of the Observer State of Palestine for their statement. The meeting is adjourned.